Assalamualaikum. I bid to my respectful lecturer, Dr. Hasbullah bin Mat Sa'ad. I am SYAZWANI binti Abdullah. And before we proceed with reviewing our case that we chose, I would like to introduce my group members. In this group, we have MEGAT Ahmad FARHAN IZZAT bin Ahmad RIZAL SATMI. We have Shanthini JOSELENE anak perempuan PATRIC Joseph, and also Wanner HUSNA binti Wan AZEMAN. And the case that we chose is Khaliyah binti Abbas and Pesaka Capital Corp Senjam Berhad. Without further ado, let's get started with the introduction on dismissal and termination under Malaysian employment law. Before we go further for the dismissal and termination under Malaysian employment law, we have to know what is employment and what are the main important points that everyone must know. So here I provide only the main points that I've picked out from the articles, from the scholars, the websites that I've read. So basically employment, everyone know it is the relationship between two parties based on a contract for work where one party is employer and another is employee. And everyone also know that a contract for employment can be brought to an end by termination or summary dismissal. And most employers provide the terms which govern either of these consequences in their staff manual or handbook. And the statute that we use under Malaysian employment law is, of course, the Labour Relations Act 1967 and the Employment Act 1955. And here is the additional information that everyone must know, that labor law and termination of employment in Malaysia are based on fairness. It seeks to find a balance between the security of tenure for employees and the rights or prerogatives of employers to dismiss employees. Based on my searchings, the COVID-19 pandemic recently has caused a big mass redundancies, retrenchment, dismissal of employees across all sectors of employment, locally as well as internationally, with the closure and downsizing of businesses. And now it is important for all employees to know and to arm themselves with the knowledge of their legal rights to ensure that they are not unfairly dismissed. So for the context, dismissal or termination, it refers when an employer ends the employee's contract of service. And in Malaysia, employer may not dismiss an employee for convenience by relying on the termination clause in an employment contract, which means the requirement for the lawful dismissal are valid and substantive justification, as well as fair procedure. When an employee is dismissed, Section 12 of the Employment Act 1955 provide that an employee must be given due notice, which means an employer cannot terminate or dismiss the employee anytime that they want because they have the contract of service. So, when the employee intends to terminate the employee, they must give the employee notice to inform of them of said intention and the justification behind it. However, in Malaysia, all employers are protected from unjust dismissal, but the employers must ensure that the employee is dismissed in a procedurally fair manner. And I have given the brief for the dismissal and termination. My group member will proceed with the next issue.
So my name is MEGAT and I'll be talking about one of the issues, whether the appellant probationer was a workman within the meaning of Section 20 Clause 1 of IRA. And first of all, a worker who is fired or who believes that his or her firing was done so without reason or justification may submit a written complaint to the Director General of IR within 60 days of the dismissal. This representation must be submitted in writing to the Department of IR closest to the place of employment from which the worker was fired, and it may also be submitted during the time when notice of the dismissal is given. And this remedy also applies where a worker feels that his employment was terminated unfairly by the employer. In a nutshell, constructive dismissal refers to circumstances in which the employee was forced to tender his resignation due to the actions, decisions, or policies that the employer imposed on the employee, and resulting in a breach of employee's contract, even though the employee has not directly terminated the employee's employment. An employee who are on probation would be covered by Section 20, Clause 1 of the Act, and the industrial court would have jurisdiction to hear the case and decide whether the appellant was fired for cause or without cause. Since a probationary employee would have the same rights as a permanent or confirmed employee, his or her services could not be dismissed without a good reason or an acceptable explanation. Like in the case of Holiday Inn, Kuching versus Lee Chai Siok Elizabeth in 1992, the respondent initially requested reinstatement in accordance with Section 20, Clause 1 of the Industrial Relations Act, but later changed her mind and requested damages in lieu of a reinstatement at the hearing before the industrial court. And since the respondent in this case is currently employed by the Hilton Kuching, she obviously did not want her previous position back. And according to our high court, the word workman should be used broadly and flexibly, and the industrial court has the authority to rule on the issue of whether or not a particular person qualifies as a workman for the purpose of the Act. And there is no set formula for answering the issue. Instead, the specifics of each instance must be considered, and finding out if the employee is hired under the contract of service or contract for service would be the first step. And for instance, an independent contractor who is employed under a contract for service and who is assigned specific duties or on a project by project basis will not be regarded as a workman for the purpose of the Act. That's it for me, sir. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and good morning. My name is HUSNA. So I'm going to add another point following by MEGAT. So another issue that is found in this case is whether the appellant have the right to seek remedy due to unfair representation. As you can see in this case, there are a term of unfair representation. Moreover, as provided under Section 20 of the Industrial Relations Act 1967, an employee who feels like the termination of him/her has been unfairly dismissed without just cause or excuse. What can they actually do? They can actually lodge a representation of the Director General of Industrial Relations within 16 days from the date of termination. Moreover, the employer is seeking for a reinstatement to his former employment with the employer. So, constructive dismissal means a situation where the employee has left with no choice but to tender his resignation due to the actions, decisions, and policies imposed by the company, resulting in a breach of contract by the employer, although there is no direct termination by the employer. So, in conclusion, another issue that has been arise in this case is whether the appellant have the right to seek remedy due to unfair representation. We move on to the next one.
Greetings to Dr. Hasbullah. My name is JOSELENE, and today I'll be presenting to you on the opinions on the case study, which is dismissing probationers without just cause and excuse. So let us get straight into the presentation. Okay, first of all, our opinion on this issue is that we believe although probationers enjoy the same right as confirmed employees, which is the right to claim for compensation of a maximum of 12 months of back wages, if they were to be terminated without just cause and excuse, we believe that employers do have the similar right, which is to assess the credibility and suitability of their probationary employees. The employer has full rights to actually assess the probationer's characters, suitability, and capacity as an employee during the probationary period. For example, we can actually cite the case of Samsudin Mat Amin against Austro Enterprise Berhad, where in this case it was actually held that with regard to work performance, probationers are actually assessed within three major aspects, which is inefficiency, incompetence, as well as ineptitude. Therefore, the main issue that will arise is whether probationers possess the right skill, competence, temperament, aptitude, and suitability, which will entitle him to transit from being a probationer to a confirmed employee. Our second opinion is that employers should actually warn probationers on bad performance via proper evaluation form. Okay, in circumstances where an employer feels that his employee is giving in bad performance and he did not comply with the requirements or basic standards of an employee, then employers should strictly warn their probationers about this poor performance by a proper evaluation form. this shall actually be documented and signed off by the probationer himself. This is actually to avoid any dismissal without just cause and excuse. And lastly, our opinion is that employers should give sufficient opportunity to probationers to improve their work performance. So, without dismissing them without proper excuse, we strongly suggest to employers to give sufficient opportunity for probationary employers to actually improve their skills. But if the probationer still fails to improve their performance after such steps have been taken, then the court actually may likely to determine that the termination was just and with proper excuse. Therefore, in a nutshell, we would actually conclude from this case study that probationers are not defined under the Industrial Relations Act, but we believe they do enjoy equal right as to be compared to a normal employee. At the same time, we strongly urge employers out there to take into consideration on what are the consequences they may face if they were to dismiss probationary employees without just cause and excuse. Therefore, to avoid an issue of unfair dismissal, employers can actually take into consideration on steps such as issuing notice of termination to probationers within a specified time as required by the law. And that's all from me. Thank you.